for you, Kiki.
I have for you guys. All right, we are now ready. So I will share screen, Brian. Robbie, if you want to start, brother, feel free.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. I hope your day is off to a beautiful start. And as always, as we get going, please sure to check your mic and to make sure it's muted. Rosea Spiritual Healing Center is a non-denominational spiritist center, and all religious spiritual traditions are welcome and respected. We are part of the United States Spiritist Federation, whose beliefs are centered around scientific, philosophical, and religious principles of Spiritism. Before we continue with the announcements, I would like to invite our brother Dave to do the opening prayer.
Thank you. Good morning, Lord. Thanks for this opportunity to continue to learn and grow. Thank you to all the spirits who guide us. Thanks to each of the members of our group that contribute in so many special ways to keep us growing and have a special camaraderie that we not otherwise ever have. Thank you for the patience you have given us and continue to extend for the amount we get done compared to what we see we should be doing in our personal transformation. This is so helpful. I pray that we can continue to be as patient with others as you are with us, because you've given us so much. We don't always use all the things that you've given us, but we sure come back asking for help when we didn't quite use all of it or overlooked it. So be it.
So be it. Thank you, brother. Okay. So Emmanuel taught us that knowledge and love are the two wings for our spiritual and moral evolution. That is the reason our study today is presented in two parts. The first part is the presentation, or the knowledge Emmanuel refers to, and your participation is always welcome. Your mentor will be supporting you with insights as we reflect upon the topic of study presented today. The second part is the healing, the love that Emmanuel refers to. Again, your mentor will be working with the BSH mediums so you can receive your healing energy. It's a beautiful opportunity to ground ourselves in the preparation for the upcoming week. And as you look here on the screen, and thank you for sharing, Kiki, there's wonderful opportunities throughout the week for us to engage in and continue our learning process and keep us grounded. We always have the prayers from 6 to 6:30 from Monday through Saturday. And that's a wonderful opportunity to come together and to share our gratitude for this beautiful opportunity given to us all. On Tuesday nights from 6:30 to 8, we have Light Ahead at Divine Light. On Wednesdays from 4 to 7, we offer fraternal counseling. And from 6:30 to 7:30, I guess that's on hold still, the introduction to Spiritism. It's starting on February 2nd. Thursdays from 6:30 to 7:30, we have the Spirits Book study with Duska. And from 7:30 to 8:05, we have Happy Life study group at Divine Light. And Fridays from 6:30 to 7:30, we have Action and Reaction study group at Divine Light. So with that, we will get to our speaker today. Let me introduce, I'm sure who we're all familiar with, Nora Brasil, who will, who will be speaking today about a wonderful topic, love your enemies, which can present us a lot of challenge at times, but it's so worth the effort to put in. Spiritism has made Nora's days much more fun, interesting, and meaningful, sparking questions about life and who we are. Nora works with children as a middle school teacher and also participates on Car Deck Radio weekly shows. She is deeply grateful to BSH for this opportunity to continue learning together. And I look forward to your topic today, Nora, because loving our enemies is such a wonderful opportunity for us to grow. It truly is. And with that, let we all check that we're muted, and the stage is yours, sister. Enjoy.
Thank you, brothers. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. I am going to put a timer. So even if we look at our times, it might, for me right now, it's 12. So even though it's past 1 o'clock, I'm following the 45-minute time because as our brother said, there is a lot when it comes to this topic. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to put myself here. So today's topic, press start, is entitled Love Your Enemies. This is from the Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 12. So it's going to be a little balance today between the science, a little bit of the science behind this, and of course the spiritual aspect that we are all here to learn and to kind of combine. So let's start with the Bible phrase that the Gospel of Spiritism presents to us. And these are Jesus's words. Ye have heard that it hath been said, Thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you, that ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and on the unjust. For if ye love them which you, what reward have ye? Do not even the publicans the same? And if ye salute your brethren only, what do ye more than others? Do not even the publicans. So I need to read this whole thing because we could probably just stop here with Jesus' words, because just this phrase has so much food for thought to remind us here really that the sun rises for all of us. We are all children of God, and so does the rain. And if anything, the question is asked, what is the reward when someone that we love loves us back, right? Versus having to take that challenge of loving someone that's a little bit harder, and we're going to figure out what exactly that means, right? Because a lot of people have misinterpreted that love, and they want to see it as like, to me it would become stressful. As a matter of fact, before coming to Spiritism, when I was sitting there at church as a kiddo, as a teenager, I was like, how could I love someone like this? Like, how is that even possible? Well, because Jesus wasn't exactly saying it the way that our language understands love. Jesus did not mean that each of us should have the same tenderness for an enemy as would be felt for a brother, sister, or friend, because he's now explains, the Spirit's explained to us here in the gospel, tenderness presupposes confidence. And no one can deposit confidence in another person knowing that they bear malice. No one can have, friendship, relationships, knowing that the other person could abuse the situation. So between people who have no confidence amongst themselves, there cannot be the same manifestations of sympathy which exist between those who share the same ideas. So in short, no one can feel the same pleasure when they're with an enemy as we are with friends. And imagine us having this understanding now. Let's look a little bit at the science to understand, because Jesus was he was very progressive. And today, neuroscience tells us a little bit more about emotions and the brain. A research here at Duke University Center for Cognitive Neuroscience had this really just very simple study. And so what they did is they collected the subjects, said, okay, guys, we're going to put you under an MRI. All I want you to do is let the thoughts flow through you, right? And as those thoughts would flow through a person, they would just collect data of what parts of the brain would be activated. And so here they have this chart. And of course, Labar says this is just the beginning. This is not an absolute. This is not yes, no, I think there's a lot of gray areas, but this is more the potential that as we start to understand our emotions, right, we can help others, right? And thinking about what Jesus was trying to explain to us, now all of a sudden, this love your enemies is not this religious thing that, oh my gosh, oh, I'm gonna suffer trying to love someone. When we know that science, just like Jesus told us, is already showing to us that we are these beings that also have a biochemistry in us. And these are just like fun facts, but of course, there's so many places that talk about how when we love, what is happening. Because I think when we look at the idea of love or enemies, we kind of have to understand what is love. And there's just lots and lots of release of hormones, right? From oxytocin to vasopressin. When we have attachments, we can even release, like during attraction, dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. All of these feel good hormones run through us, and even testosterone and estrogen and estrogen to different states of different ways that we love others. So we know that scientists say that love is like a chemical and it's primitive. And they are even saying because animals are primitive and there's a show of love, even when we show love to our pets, they're also loving us back too. So understanding this is helps us so much to understand that love is not this poetic thing. It's biological, it's a process, and it can be evolved. And so going back to the gospel, it says here that Jesus and the spirits are helping us understand. Love and hate are like this vibration. An evil thought produces a vibrational current which causes an unpleasant impression. A good thought encompasses us with very agreeable emanation. As a reason for the different sensations which are experienced on the approximation of a friend or an enemy. So then, to love one's enemy cannot signify there should be no difference between the affection of an enemy and that of a friend. So this is very difficult, as it says here, right? But Jesus understood that we cannot give both friends and enemy an equal place in our hearts. But it was so difficult to explain because of the language. And we here in nature and science, even that naturally exists where two things are very difficult to combine. We have the classic oil and water example, right? The oil has its own properties to protect its membrane, right? The lipids inside, and the water wants to be all over, but it's not going to let it go because that's his way of nature. And we want to have actually these mechanisms because even in our body, imagine if there was none of this balance, then there would be no equilibrium. Water would go all over the place. The lipids, we can keep going. It's a natural way. If anything, understanding this makes like a harmony because it works together. We have the example of the magnets as well, right? The two opposites attract, the same repel. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just part of nature. Scientists did another study. So let's talk about this because our study today is about loving our enemies. And they think there's this hate circuit inside our brains. And Professor Ziki, and I apologize, these are all my notes. I couldn't figure out where to put my notes, so I hope I'm not bombarding you with so much, but they're really for me to stay in check so I can go on a tangent. Professor Zeki says hate is often considered to be an evil passion that should, in a better world, be tamed, controlled, and eradicated. Yet to the biologist, hate is a passion that is of equal interest to love. Like love, it is often seemingly irrational and can lead individuals to heroic and evil deeds. So how can two opposite sentiments lead to the same behavior, right? And so here we go, looking at the biology of love, the little bit that we understand. It's funny because in this study, they got 17 subjects and they had them view pictures or think of memories of someone they hated, which coincidentally or not, it was funny. It was all their exes. And that created different circuits in the body, excuse me, in the brain. Well, interestingly, those same circuits happen when there is a strong emotion of love. So when we think about them, it's the same circuit. There is a difference though, but the both extremes are part of our biology. Not again, we're not looking at this word hate in this aspect, we're looking at it from a biological perspective. And so what are the differences between these two in the brain? So in areas of love, right, when it hits the cerebral cortex, people are less critical and judgmental. But this is interesting. The hater may want to exercise judgment in calculating moves to harm, injure, or otherwise extract revenge. So when we are not loving our enemies, even in the science shows the potential that it can lead if we don't work on these circuits. So let's go back to the gospel. So then what do we do? So then what does all this mean? And the spirits tell us to love one's enemy means we should not hate nor bear rancor against them, nor desire vengeance. It means to forgive all the evil they have caused without hidden thoughts and without conditions. It means not to put obstacles in the way of reconciliation and to wish them well. Instead of bad things, it is to feel joy instead of regret at the good things that may come their way, to help them whenever possible, and to abstain by words or acts from everything which might prejudice them. Finally, it means to always return goodness for evil without any intention to humiliate. Whosoever can proceed in this manner fulfills the conditions of the commandment, love your enemies. And there it is. All of a sudden, it's like, okay, I can take a breather. Jesus just told me it's not me going in front of someone and begging and I'm gonna take my life because I'm carrying this guilt and I don't love you. You didn't know. It's sending them good vibrations, wishing them well, and to be at peace, because even our brains have circuits for all of these emotions which are part of us, to work on these and to eventually evolve. So then we can maybe say Jesus is probably, and the spirits are helping us understand this idea of emotional intelligence. So it's not so much about this, right? In this book, A New World, the New Human Race, from Monica de Madeiro. She's an excellent Brazilian medium, and I just love the way she is with the spiritual community, so enlightened. In this book, she talks about the new generations that are coming in, and they already come in equipped with a higher emotional intelligence, right? She claims emotions can be trained, and thus we can become better, more harmonious beings, more at peace with ourselves and with the environment. Training to be grateful for everything we have, even if it's not what we want, is the first giant step towards maturity, right? So gratitude has an extraordinary power to alter our energy field. That can alter and create new neural networks. And once again, we see the path here that we can change all of this, right? Another feeling that she talks about is mercy. To work on that energy of high vibration, empathy is the word of the law. So we look at loving our enemies. It's really us working on this emotional intelligence, being more grateful, being more merciful, more empathetic, right? That is a blessing. And how do we do this? And even the spirits tell us, develop emotional intelligence, we must seek self-knowledge, which is what we do in here, right? As we do this. And so this is a busy slide, but it really is now speaking to us as spiritists, right? As spiritists, we know, as the spirit says here, that we are going to encounter difficulties, hardships, but we are expected to know all of this, right? And says weakness is part of our everyday life. So from this elevated point of view, all of a sudden the vicissitudes are easier to bear. They're less bitter, whether they originate from fellow beings or other things, right? So it's almost saying, we are put to the test, but can we thank all of those and say thank you for this opportunity to demonstrate patience and resignation, right? This is the idea of having that emotional intelligence developing every day in ourselves to be able to say this. But what's beautiful here, it says, they also know that apart from this, the more generous they are, the more they become elevated in their own eyes. So putting themselves beyond the reach of their enemies' darts. In other words, we don't need to stoop down to anyone's level. As spiritists, we are invited to be in this elevated point of view, right, of forgiveness. So we have to finish. I didn't go over the whole chapter, dear friends, but there's two spirits that just bring it to us, like down to earth, real talk, as I like to say with my students. And this one's a protecting spirit. And he says, what would you say if you saw two adversaries being plunged into boiling water or submitted to the contact of red hot iron in order to put an end to their dispute? Right? What would we say when we see two people going, they won't survive, they're gonna have severe burns? It doesn't make sense, right? And yet that's what the spirit is saying. When we don't see ourselves in that higher vibration, it's like if we're just plunging into that same boiling water with someone else when we don't try to work our differences. All right. This other letter or message from Francois Xavier is super impactful, and I think it's very current in our times. It says, due to a word sometimes said without thinking or the wish to offend coming from one of your fellow beings, your pride is hurt. So you then reply scathingly, and there seems a provocation, right? Before the decisive moment arrives, ask yourself, are you behaving like a Christian? It says here, what will you have to answer to society if you rob one of its members, right? So I think it's safe to say in our group, we wouldn't be in these quarrels or these duels like back in the day, right? We have evolved, but sometimes we can do this if we do not learn how to communicate more effectively in this forgiveness. We can kill someone's dreams, someone's hope, someone's good mood sometimes, and change things. So we are being asked to think about this and act like Christians. So of course, now we're going to go into lots and lots of examples. The first one that we have is Jesus. He really showed us how to forgive our enemies. When he was on that cross, they were making fun of him. They were saying, hey, save yourself, mocking him. And he just said, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. And then there's in between, they continue making fun of him. And the only time he responded was when the man next to him, who actually did commit a crime, said, but this man, he's done nothing wrong. And he said, I beg you, Jesus, show me grace and take me with you into your everlasting kingdom. And then Jesus says, I promise you, this very day, you will enter paradise with me, right? He didn't waste his energy. He knew about forgiveness. There was none of this drama, none of this. It was very elevated, right? And if anything, it teaches us that it is the prayer, because when Jesus was at one of his hardest points, he was praying, and he was praying for forgiveness. Of course, we cannot go today without talking about Shiko, because Shiko is also a beautiful example of loving our enemies. The first one is Shiko, and this is coming from the book Lindos Casos de Shiko, like beautiful cases of Shiko. And as Shiko was an orphan, he had to go live with his godmother. And his godmother was an obsessor, and she was really mean to him. Two of the things that I think Shiko shared with us that they were really tough was that the godmother would get a fork and would like stab his stomach, and it hurt him, right? And the other thing, and if you, there's a movie too, if you've seen the movie, the godmother's son got like an infection on his knee, and she goes to this lady, this healer, and the healer says, oh, somebody has to lick your son's wound and it will be healed. So the godmother comes back and asks Shiko, you're going, no, doesn't ask, tells Shiko, you are going to lick your cousin's wound, right? And Shiko talks to his mom in spirit, oh my God, right? And the spiritual mom says, Shiko, be obedient. And sure enough, Shiko licks the knee, and he gets healed. But notice what Shiko calls this godmother, an educator. There was no hatred. There was nothing. And when he tells the story, he says it so lightly, right? Let me take this as a lighter story of Shiko. And it's the Bible beating. It also comes from this. And so they were doing a disobsession, as we know Shiko loved to do. Well, that was his mission, to work with disobsession. That he just wanted brothers and sisters to be free. And there was this case where it was a lot harder. It took days and days to disobsess these young girls. So they invited like a minister over, and he had his Bible. And Shiko was the medium of that group. And so in this evening, they tell the minister with the Bible, okay, Shiko is a medium, so if we get a message coming through Shiko, just hit them hard with the gospel, just hit them hard, right? With the gospel. So sure enough, the obsessions come, Chico sends the message, and then the minister grabs the Bible and literally hits him hard with the gospel, hits him hard with the gospel, and Chico gets hurt. And it's funny, but Chico was so loving. He made this story so comical, but how many of us would have been like, hey, it hurt, right? No, he was able to again walk through this. I thought that was really, really a cute story. But of course, we have more stories. We have so many in Spiritism. It was so hard to choose. I was like, oh my gosh. But Andre Luis and the Messengers has a beautiful story of forgiveness. So we have Ismael Alfredo and Paulo. Ismael and Alfredo were a couple, and Paulo had those jealousies, right? So we know that love your neighbor has a lot of these stories of exes and romantic love. So this is one of them. And so Ismael and Alfredo started to become apart because Alfredo was listening to Paulo's, hey, Ismael is cheating on you, Ismael is cheating on you. So Paulo deceives and breaks up this relationship. He finds a guy, pays him to be inside the room. And when Alfredo walks into the room, he sees the man, he's like, oh my gosh, get out of here. And Ismael, you're so unfaithful, right? So they break up the marriage. It was terrible. Of course, Alfredo is carrying all of this with him. He gets an opportunity to come across Paulo again. And Paulo says to him, I'm really sorry. It wasn't true. Ismael never did it. I was the one that was responsible for this. And he felt so bad. Alfredo did not forgive him in that life. It wasn't until he disincarnated, right? Which we get here in the Messengers. He was already way past that. But Paulo had a really hard time. In chapter 27, the slanderer, he's still in that distressful mode because he didn't let it go. And as the spirits are teaching us, right? When we die, we still carry on all of this with us. And Paulo had to clear his consciousness, right? And the only way that would happen would be him reincarnating back. So can you believe, dear friends, that Ismalia and Alfredo were going to work together? But actually, it was mostly Ismalia. She was working on getting Paulo, a family, to come and to incarnate. And what was more beautiful, she said, I don't want Paulo to feel embarrassed that I'm helping him because Paulo is feeling really bad for what happened. Now that is a loving your enemies. We have another story in the greater world, Cipriana, Pedro, and Camilo. I love this more to focus on Cipriana, the mother love, right? So Pedro kills Camilo in another life. And now we focus on Camilo and Cipriana because Camilo too was like, oh my gosh, Pedro took my life. I'm never gonna be, this, right? So he was actually walking around feeling sorry for himself. So not only that, but then Camilo is attached to Pedro. And so what happens? He's becoming like an obsessor, poking at him. I'm not gonna forgive you. I'm not gonna forgive you. So Cipriana asked Camilo, so for you, what have you done? For exactly 20 years, you haven't harbored anything else, right? Except vengeance towards Pedro. Is it worth being a victim to receive the crown of pain, right? Is it worth being a victim? It was so powerful when she says, who among us, my friend, can understand the meaning of suffering? You have asked why the Lord has allowed you to undergo such a hard trial. Isn't that the same as asking a potter what compelled him to set the form of a delicate piece in scorching heat? Or asked an artist what led to the hammering of a raw stone to turn it into a magnificent sculpture, right? So Camilo's being in this victim form was missing the point. And it's so important for us too, dear friends, as we're thinking about if we are the ones that are being hurt, right? It's okay to feel, but Camilo was lingering for 20 years. He couldn't move on. But we have to trust God that even in that pain, there's something beautiful that's going to be created out of it. Well, these words changed Camilo. And what's interesting, he says, it was your sentiment. So sometimes we think, oh, I'm just going to say I'm sorry or I forgive you. But it doesn't quite work that way. And spirituality is teaching that it has to come from within these sentiments. And so this beautiful case of forgiveness even affected Pedro. So Pedro's down here. Pedro wakes up healed and feeling refreshed. His little son Guillermo is so excited. What a beautiful story. But to remind us, woman, I love the way Andre ends this chapter. Women sanctified by sacrifice and suffering are bearers of the divine maternal love that intervenes in the world to ennoble human being sentiment. If anything, when you're having difficulties forgiving, let's think of this mother spirit. It could be your mother's, the spiritual mother, Mother Mary. It's there in this beautiful maternal love. These sentiments can break through every barrier, right? So now let's go back to all of this, because we're talking about all of is there a chemistry for all of this? We're talking about couples and everything, and there is Harvard has a study. I love how they call it a total eclipse of the brain, right? And there are different kinds of attractions, and in all these, as we showed in the other one, the same hormones are distributed and they are released, right? But what's interesting is what happens when love hurts. And dopamine, which runs the reward pathway in the brain, is in moderate doses helps us enjoy things, right? But it can also be the one that can underline unhealthy emotional dependence. It could be the one that makes us feel things. So if we find ourselves in a situation that, someone hurt us, whether it be a partner or anything like that, right? Once again, that emotional intelligence creates those networks so that instead of having the release of these hormones in a negative way, they come about in a more peaceful way. We start to learn how to do that. And of course, she goes, and Andre give us this classic story of Evelina, Ernesto, Caio, and Vera, who were like, Evelina and Caio were married. Evelina disincarnates, and she's so jealous. She's holding on to Caio, and Caio is in a new relationship with Vera. And what's interesting here is that Evelina and Ernesto are friends, and it turns out that Vera was Ernesto's daughter, and Evelina and Ernesto are working together for Caio and Vera. And there's a huge, huge story. I'm sure a lot of us have read this book, but what does this bring to us? Evelina worked her emotions, even in the spirituality. And there is a point when Ernesto found out that Vera was with Caio, and he's, oh my God. And Evelina says, brother, compose yourself. If anything, we're like brothers and sisters. Now we see how now Evelina has still loves Caio, but it's different now. It's not those other lower vibrational feelings. And this is a message of hope. So let's talk about like regular stuff in our everyday things, right? There's this Netflix show called Bonus Family, and these two in the front, these two, so it's Swedish, but I think it has the English subtitles. I watched all 4 seasons, and it basically, this couple, they break up, they divorce, and they go to therapy, and they have to like forgive themselves and understand that each of them will move on. They're going to get their partners, and instead of separating, they come together, and every child is a bonus son, a bonus daughter. I'm a bonus dad, a bonus mom. It was so beautiful, but there has to be a lot of work. Richard Schwartz, in the Harvard Gazette, said, love is very complex, right? There are different phases of moods of love from the beginning to the end. But he does say, and though science is learning more in the lab than ever, he still learns from counseling, right? So there's still that potential. We still have to work. So yes, there is science, but we also have those conscious choices. With Spiritism is helping us put those two together. This is another, if you have Showtime, it's called Time of Death. And this right here is Michael. And Michael met the love of his life, as he said, and before dying, about 3 weeks before dying, he talks about how he really regretted being so mean to his first wife, and they literally show him disincarnating, which was very powerful. I had to like press stop. It was very powerful, but they called his first wife, the ex-wife, and they sat there, and he says literally minutes before, please hug me. And they hugged, And that was one of the, I'm sorry and I'm sorry. And he said, if I can do it all over again, it would to forgive, so that I didn't have to carry this on. And so that's so impactful to hear it from people, that are in these difficult situations. All right. So a lot of us now going back to, okay, so um we don't think that, we always think, okay, hardships are because we are in a lower zone, because we're paying karma. Let's not try to get trapped through this. Some of us, yes, we have difficulties, but difficulties does not equal a bad karma, or that someone is like meant to get you, right? We have Samuel Philippe in Heaven and Hell. He's a happy spirit, and he says, you who made me suffer when I was upon the earth, who were harsh and unkind to me, who humiliated me and filled my cup with bitterness, whose treachery often reduced me to the hardest privations. I not only forgive you, I thank you for all you did. You little thought that intending to do me harm, you were really doing me so much good. It is you that I owe in great measure the happiness I enjoy, for you gave me the opportunity of forgiving and of returning good for evil. The divine providence placed upon you my road in order to try my patience and to exercise me in the practice of the most difficult branch of charity, the love of our enemies. So, friends, just because hardships come, we cannot, oh, an obsessor, oh, no, no. It's part of life. And as Samuel Philippe is teaching us, embrace those opportunities and it is difficult. It's difficult, but once you're on this side, you're going to see it was worth everything. We cannot leave today without talking about this sermon by Martin Luther King Jr. Let me tell you, it was so hard to choose things. And even today, as I'm looking at my timer, I won't be able to go through everything. He gives this sermon in such a powerful context, and love how he constantly brings Jesus. He says, the words of this text glitter in our eyes with a new urgency. Far from being the pious injunction of a utopian dreamer, this command is an absolute necessity for the survivor of our civilization. So he says Jesus is not a utopian dreamer. He's telling us if we want to survive, we need to love our enemies. We have, as he says here, the Christian and moral responsibility to seek, to discover the meaning of these words, and to discover how we can live out this command and why we should live by this command. Whew, that in itself is priceless. And he just continues saying, the one way to love our enemies is by self-analyzing. We need to know ourselves, so that if, as he says here, someone else comes and hates us, it's not because of me, it's them. But in order for us to understand that, as he says, we have to understand ourselves. A second thing that individual must do to love enemies is to discover the element of good in the enemy. Every time we want to hate someone or we want to be in that vibration, we have to think good points about that person. He says another way to love our enemies, when the opportunity presents itself to defeat the enemy, that is the time you must not do it. So we can go back to Jesus. Could he have gotten off the cross? Could he have, said things? Yes, he could have, but that was not the way to forgive the enemies. Wasn't there a more powerful vibration, a more powerful way of seeing it when he comes out the other end victorious? He comes back with not on the cross, but super alive. And if anything, I know that Andre in the messenger says that till today, a lot of us hold Jesus with that image of that cross because we are still needing to forgive ourselves for that, right? So, but Jesus didn't have to do anything, and he did it just by his actions, and that's exactly what Martin Luther King Jr. is saying in this sermon, right? It's not just a sentiment. Love is creative, understanding goodwill for all men. Um, and I think the first reason we should love our enemies, it was because it's the very center of Jesus' thinking. Hate will only intensify, right? So if I hate you, you hate me, I hate you back, and we create. So love by our enemies is strong, is cutting this, and we need a strong person to cut this chain. And he also talks about how when we are in this lower vibration, we're not clear on our intentions. It says here, for the person who hates, the beautiful becomes ugly and the ugly becomes beautiful. For the person who hates, the good becomes bad and the bad becomes good. For the person who hates, the true becomes false and the false becomes true. That's what hate does. We can't see right, and we cannot let this happen, right? And so again, he talks about Abraham Lincoln, and Abraham Lincoln had Stanton, who was after him and was, saying, no, don't choose Abraham, blah, blah, blah. And so moving forward, Abraham becomes president, and guess who he hires? Stanton. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, why would you do this, right? But when Abraham disincarnates, Stanton leaves the most powerful inspirational message. And like Martin Luther King points out, Stanton would have gone to his grave hating Lincoln, and Lincoln would have gone to his grave hating Stanton. But through the power of love, Abraham was able to redeem Stanton. So Stanton, I can't say his name. So imagine the opportunities for us as well today, right? And the prayer is, we can just talk about this prayer, but it's so beautiful where it says here, grant that all men come together and discover that as we solve crises and problems, international problems, atomic energy, race problem, let us join together in great fellowship of love and bow down at the feet of Jesus, right? Give us this strong determination in the name of the Spirit of the Christ. Oh, I'm literally feeling right now very, very powerful. You can YouTube it and listen to a difference. It's beautiful. So in order for us to be in this, we have to see Eyes with a Love. I'm sure a lot of you have read Don Miguel Ruiz in this beautiful book, The Mastery of Love. And he reminds us, guys, we are responsible for the billions and billions of cells inside of our bodies. So we have a choice as we're responsible. We can feed them love or we can feed them hate. What are we doing? And I love how he brings out this puja. Are we doing a puja every day? And puja is this Indian ritual where they offer to their gods and goddesses, right? Flowers and food and all this attention. And it says every day you can offer a devotional love to your body, like a puja to ourselves, right? That's self-love. Because when we do that, our eyes of love start to grow. But if you have eyes of love, you just see love wherever you go. The trees are made with love. The animals are made with love. The water is made with love. When you perceive with the eyes of love, you can connect your will with the will of another dreamer, and the dreamer becomes one. When you perceive with love, you become one with the birds, with nature, with a person, with everything. When you can see with the eyes of an ego or transform into any kind of life. With love, you connect with the ego and you become the wings, or you become the rain or the clouds. But to do this, you need to clean the mind of fear and perceive with eyes of love. You have to develop your will until it is so strong that it can hook the other will and become one will. Then you have wings to fly or be in the wind. You can come here, you can go there, you can push away the clouds and the sun is shining. This is the power of love. How beautiful. Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. And I go back to Monica. And the reason I bring this because we have so much different authors that are reminding us of this emotional intelligence, right? Life is in contact with nature, living together and learning to love with pets, participating in social projects, trying to live together and reviewing positions regarding relatives or people who are not similar to us to gain references for emotional maturity. It will hurt, but it's one of those birth pains whose birth will bring a better being, a new being to the light of the world. Now, does forgiveness, does letting go of everything help us? It sure does. John Hopkins Medicine Journal says that studies have found forgiveness can reap huge awards to our health, lowering our risk of heart attack, improving cholesterol or sleep, reducing pain, blood pressure, levels of anxiety, depression, and stress, right? So some people, interesting says, some people are naturally more forgiving than others. And we as spiritists know that this has to do with our evolution, but most importantly, the willingness for us to do the work. It says here that those that are having a difficult time letting go can expect, Holding on to grudges will experience depression, post-traumatic disorders, and other health conditions. So science is already letting us know that forgiving our neighbors and being more at peace will also create physical, biological effects on ourselves, right? So I think to end this, we're pretty much at the end. To come back as spiritist. Chapter 9, The Messengers of Love. Jesus left a beautiful story. In this story, there was a messenger that was a teacher, a doctor, a warrior, and a musician, and none of these could hold on to that vibration of love. But it was the messenger of being a servant that did it. He began to work for the common good and identify with the people to whom he had come to serve. He forgave immediately and repeated the same effort or the same lesson 1,000 times over. If he was humiliated, he tried to see the offense as a beneficial challenge in order to love his brothers and sisters in struggle without holding back. Many times he was compelled to pray for help from heaven. Jesus sends here, knowledge and love are two wings that reach the divine throne, but far and wide are those who love. Those are the ones that are far ahead. So when we think about these huge people that have, I mean, this is just very little, right? Gandhi, Mandela, Mother Teresa, St. Francis of Assisi, Malala, even to, right? In the center, I put right here, me too, because we too are examples of loving our enemies, and we have that potential. All right, dear friends. So this is the study for today. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to take a sip of water. Thank you.
Good job. That was awesome. I love the depth and variety of information you brought, from scientific to moral to encouraging. Like, that was really awesome. I think for me, loving your enemies, where I'm at in my study and progression, is I'm aware of like how much understanding do I have, and am I practicing tolerance? And those are the two things, because I offer both of those to my daughter. And I was talking to my brother-in-law about this, but I find it fascinating how fast within me it'll drop off. But because if my daughter cut me off driving, I would laugh about it and be like, you dork, pay attention. But depending on someone else, I might have a different reaction for them. So we can gauge ourselves. It's always about knowing who we are, and it always goes within. And that was something I had to learn, because the concept, the concept of an enemy is interesting, that we even have that, because we create that within ourselves. Like, there are no enemies unless we decide there are. And humanity has struggled with that concept for so long. It's just ingrained. You look at our country, we have enemies all around the world, but we don't. How often do we reach out with compassion and try for a different path? So I'm going to stop there, because I'll rattle on, because I've had a cup of coffee already, and give it to someone else. But I had a lot of notes. Thank you for the variety of stuff. I'm going to look at purchasing the book and definitely downloading the Martin Luther King, because I can't get enough of what that spirit offered us. We were so blessed to have him. So thank you so much. And I'll open it up for other comments.
Hey, Nora, I'm so grateful for your presentation. You gave us a gift in 30, 40 minutes or so, that you gave us so much information, so much quality information, that I'm still at awe. And I appreciate that, because like Robbie was saying, I got lots of notes out of it too. I'm going to review them. But one thing that really caught my attention is that when you look at the real definition of enemy, the proper word is to be adversary. So an adversary is not really an enemy, it's our reflection. So what we see in others is not somebody that is really opposing us, we see our own reflection. So the enemy is actually our educator, and I appreciate that so much. And also to remind that this emotional intelligence is so critical for us to understand, that the point, and the Spiritist doctrine teaches us this, is not to eliminate the enemy, is to find a harmony into that. Is not to get rid of bad, is to find a way to live in harmony with what is bad and what's not, because I know that in me, there's this powerful force that I could create chaos if I choose to, but I don't choose that anymore. It's gone. So that's where we need to move in towards, is to have the same vision as Jesus had. Jesus didn't look at the person at that present moment. Jesus looked at his vision that in the future, that person is going to be a perfect being. So he looked at the future and the potential of that person. So he didn't look at the present and stay locked into that temporary state of beingness. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. That was amazing. And I'm envy your students, because if you're teaching this in a classroom, my goodness, can I sign up? Thank you.
Nora, dear, your talk blew on my heart and ignited my heart flame to a bigger and better place. So thank you so much. I loved it, every single bit of it. Thank you.
I especially appreciate the part where you brought in what science has learned about the way the body and the mind, the brain and the circuits respond to the conditions of love and hate in a scientific way. That's beautiful. That people that are very science-oriented, if they had to, they could look at that and go, you got a point there. Thank you. It was wonderful. Exceptional presentation. Great.
Absolutely. Science is showing us a lot.
Good morning.
Morning.
So, what caught my attention the most was about human love and the process that we have to go through to love, and that it is a process and it does take time. But I think the beauty of love is that it can be seen in each and everything and each other. You know, mostly the point of it all is for us to learn to love each other. And that is where we start elevating, is when we can accept and love all that has been created, and particularly ourselves and others. Thanks, Nora.
Thank you.
Well, I like everything, and it's a lot to remind ourselves, a lot of notes that you brought. Imagine the rest of the notes that you have, that what I was thinking, what she has more, my gosh, maybe the next topic, topic 2, no?
There's a lot.
Yeah, because if you have a lot of left, does not lose it, no? Bring that to us, please. And I was just thinking, and I'm always not thinking alone, always have some spirit around. So remember when Jesus loved his enemies, and a voice of the Spirit came right before you said that and said, was Jesus enemies? And then Charles brought adversary. So that is why it happened, because I don't believe if we go in your house, you have a big family, and then one, it is against another, so that only one person will make everybody be against that person. And the other person does not have anything against you. They don't even have why I do not like Nora. What Nora did to me, no? So imagine how many thousands of people was against Jesus that time, because a group of people, let's say a group of 310 people, that was the masters that time. They said, we have to stop him. So do you see the power of the hate? No? That is the power of the hate that put in the whole mass a bunch of group of people that did not think about Jesus, what he did against them. So there is a good topic for us to think about the gossip, about the influences of the leaders, the politics, or any other leaders. We need to pay attention to go to, we say in Brazil, please someone help me, passa tudo pelo crivo da razão. Chico always said that. We have to filter everything into your wisdom, into the reason. And you have to meditate on that. Why what I have against Nora? What she did with me? What Tanya said about Nora is truth or not? So again, with always when we go with the spirit of truth, and I really hope that the love will prevail like you brought to us. And now the message there is love. Is the only way for us to make peace within us and bring this peace to outside to make a better world. Thanks so very much. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Nora, thank you so much, sister. That was beautiful. I also enjoyed that you brought the science and the spiritual aspect of all of that. It just always reminds us how much we should always combine efforts, so then we overcome all of our primitive instincts. And then this also reminded me about and I won't remember what is the book that we were discussing about the importance of polarities. All the extremes, they are important for us because they are part of our primitive sense. And Jesus came to teach us to find the harmony between those polarities. So if we are still in one side or the other side, or still not finding the harmony, we are still going to face a lot of that polarity. A lot of love that will bring us obsession, and then we'll end up in those cases that you showed us, or a lot of hate that instead of bringing justice will then start bringing wars and all that kind of stuff. So thank you so much for reminding us how important it is that we understand the polarities, so then we can find the harmony. And then to that point, I loved that you brought about the emotional balance, because the emotion is really what drives us out of this serenity that Tanya was just saying. And I feel like because of our primitive instincts, we just don't allow our emotions to find that filter that she was mentioning about the reasoning. So then instead of following our reason, we follow our unbalanced emotion. So I think that it's really important that we understand how to balance our emotions, so then we can keep in this path of finding the harmony between love and hate. Thank you, sister. Thank you so much. God bless you.
God bless you guys. Thank you.
I wanted to add one more quick thing, and that was we learned during a talk on courage at Divine Light last week that this is a quote from Bruce Lipton, that one person vibrating on love, which is the frequency of 500, counteracts 750,000 people vibrating on 200 and below, which is below courage, which is fear, shame, guilt, and all of those. So that, boosts hopefully our desire to vibrate on love. So thank you so much. And forgiveness, of course, is the key for that.
Thank you, sister.
All right, anybody else have any comments?
Yeah, I mean, what I was thinking is a lot of times we get messages that are, you say, food for thought. Well, this is fuel for action. These are really cool things anybody can try out. You can use it wherever you want, and you can use it as much as you want. And the more you apply the forgiveness, the more you accept how you are. And as you pointed out, we learn in so many ways. Thank you. This is a wonderful presentation. It's really good action energy, not just to think about it. It's fun to go out and do it. Thank you.
Beautiful.
I use that quote, okay, Dave? Food for thought, fuel for action. Amazing.
Yeah, it's a good point. Dave brings up, we find the joy in being able to practice. That's a really cool thing to have. If no one else has any comments, thank you so much, Nora. I bet you learned so much putting this together. Good for you. And we will come back at 5 after the hour. Bring your water and put the names of those in the chat. Is that what we do, Kiki, right? For our Monday night.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So bring those names and your water. We'll see you back in just a couple minutes and we'll start our second part.
Robbie, I was teletransported somewhere. I'm barely coming back.
Oh, it's so amazing when you do the presentations. You learn so much.